And welcome to a special edition of your school board. This is Friday, June 27th, 2025. The time is now 3:30, and we're going to call the meeting to order and begin with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get going tonight, we do have a remote participant. Mr. DeWitt is actually enjoying some vacation and is kind enough to join us remotely tonight. With that, Mr. DeWitt, if you could just explain who is with you and the reason for being remote.
Good evening. I am enjoying some camping with my family in mid-state New Hampshire, and I am currently alone.
All right, thank you, sir. Can we entertain a motion to allow Mr. DeWitt to participate in voting today?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Shoemaker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ames. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Plansky?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ms. Ames?
Aye.
That carries 4-0. All voting tonight, or this afternoon, will be through roll call for remote participation. Thank you for that. We have community comment on agenda items. Seeing there's nobody here from community, we will close community comment at this time, and we are going to move into new business. Before getting going into new business today, I want to again specially thank not only the administration, but also the board for meeting on a Friday afternoon. Certainly as we look to close the books for the end of our fiscal year with the school district on Monday, June 30th, we want to make sure that we have absolute clarity and oversight into the end of year balances, and with some changes that were brought to my attention over the past week since the last board meeting, we wanted to make sure the board was aware of those changes and we came together to talk about those. With that, I will turn it over to the business administrator and superintendent to get things started.
As we were calculating the year-end balance, we did have a miscalculation in estimating that number when we met for the board meeting last week. There are a lot of things that go into calculating the fund balance. This is certainly not an easy task to try to really whittle this down. I have certainly tried my best to make this first year as successful as possible in this role. It has been challenging at times, and so I apologize if there have been errors. I do want to make sure that, by having this meeting, that we're able to have a true understanding of the fund balance that we have, so that we can have conversations about what we need to do next moving forward. We do have, at the last meeting, we did estimate our fund balance at being about $780,000. That is not the case, we have learned, and looking more carefully at the budget. We are looking more at a $1.4 million anticipated fund balance. There are lots of things that contribute to that, certainly. I understand that is not a number that we were certainly hoping for. It's certainly not the number I was hoping for at the end of this first year of being in charge of this budget. But that's kind of where we're at. Certainly if you have specific questions on anything that we currently have outstanding, or how we got to this number, certainly.
I think we should just pause for a moment and just clarify that that's underspend.
That is correct.
Yeah, we're in a town where
That
they've
is
heard
correct.
those numbers before and it was the other direction.
Yes.
So just
Yes.
want to pause and
you are correct.
because there's someone watching YouTube right now that's
Yes. No.
firing away on Facebook, and we'll
No.
pause them, and
I
it's not that
appreciate
direction.
That is correct.
Okay, so just to recap, last board meeting, we were, the underspend was about $780,000, of which the board took action to do several encumbrances. That starting balance has changed. That $780,000 is actually now $1.4 million, which has changed the end of year amount to return, estimated to return to the taxpayers at this point, as of this moment. We were anticipating to return approximately $275,000 at the end of our last meeting. Currently, where that sits right now is $894,000 and change. With that being said, some questions I have are, what is the direct association of that 1.4 million to positions and to underspend on positions?
So with regard to positions, we had, let me get the correct spreadsheet up. One. So we had about $800,000 with regard to two positions that were underspent in this current budget. Again, I understand that's a very large number, and that is something that we tried to deal with when we were budgeting for this next school year, which is why we offered to cut several para positions because we knew we were not using them. There are a lot of positions that are unfortunately just very difficult to fill in education, and we're not unique to that. That is certainly something that is a statewide issue, and that's something that we're going to need to be more creative going forward in how we look at systems and how we look at positions and what we can do to make that gap close a little bit more. So that is certainly a significant part of the underspend.
And out of that 800 or so thousand, just to confirm, that includes salary and benefits?
That's correct.
And out of that 800,000, what specifically is special education? Do we know that? Like even a percentage, like approximate?
A lot.
It is,
Most of it, right?
It's a
Yeah.
very high number.
It's the bulk of that is the paraprofessionals,
Yeah.
when it comes to the salary portions of it. The health insurance is, there was about a difference of about underspent of about 96,000 on health insurance, and that was essentially comes down to 3 people not taking health insurance. For example, I don't take health insurance with the district, where I think the previous superintendent did. So it can just swing a little bit. Like
And we
that,
have, we have to budget for that because someone can elect to take the health insurance. Like, we don't know until they,
Yeah, I mean,
And it could change from
Yeah.
year to year.
right.
I mean, I'll just take myself personally, like, in my family, I've traditionally been the one who has carried the health insurance for my family. We ended up switching this year when I came here. I won't get into some of the personal reasons for that, but we ended up switching to my wife's job because of reasons. And so you would probably carried my health insurance, and now it's not there, so, yeah.
Yeah, and in looking at that specifically, there's essentially 3 positions that are vacant that are not special education.
This was a budget committee question asked last night, and I had estimated like 90% of that number of the unfilled positions was approximately special education related. I don't know if that's about
I think it's a
right.
little bit lower. One of the positions was a teacher, a regular ed teacher position that we eliminated next year already, you know. And then some of them are positions that we just didn't fully staff throughout the year, like our custodial staff. That was something that some of those positions started empty. We filled them during the year, so we did carry some of that open salary, you know, because we had budgeted for the full year.
Was that not, did we not offset with contracting out?
We did some, right. So we have that huge number for personnel, then we have a contracted number. We're in good
So there was a
shape.
delta between the two. We had a positive, still had excess funds.
Yeah, even.
It wasn't like what we contracted out for, it wasn't.
Wasn't dollar for dollar,
what
yeah,
we-
yeah.
okay. So with respect to positions, obviously, like, a taxpayer is gonna look at this and say, that's a big number, like, you're way off on what you need for employees. Can you just, like, quickly talk about, in terms of, I know you've made some cuts for the future budget, but can you just, like, give us an idea of are these important positions, or should we be, because the budget committee's gonna look at it and say, you should be slashing this, right?
And if we don't, we're gonna have hard conversations with the budget committee in the fall.
Right.
I will, to answer your question with just like a precursor to it. This was a budget that we certainly didn't develop. Like, that was developed, 18, 20 months ago. And I'm not trying to use that as an excuse, but seeing it from our perspective, now seeing the whole budget, I do think there's personnel that we can be more strategic about and look at cutting. Like, when we proposed our budget for next year, we made reductions of, I think it was a total of 10 paraprofessional positions. And then in January, with you as a board, we ended up cutting a teacher position, because as the year went on, we felt confident that we could deliver the services without those positions.
I just want to clarify,
Right.
you said personnel, but you're meaning positions, right?
Positions, yeah.
Okay. Not personnel cuts as in firing.
Correct,
I just
right.
want to make sure we're clear.
So I think we have to be strategic when we see positions that remain unfilled, that we can't just carry that money with us. And I think that's just a change in mindset from, at least myself, for me personally, and I think in the education field in general, I think a lot of times, you know, in I won't say better times, but in previous times when it was easier to fill positions in education, we would carry open positions from year to year with the hopes of, yeah, we'll eventually fill it, right? Now, there are critical positions that we have to carry, right? For example, currently, right this second, we have 2 open case manager positions at the high school. They're our last 2 professional positions we have open. We have to deliver services. There are kids assigned to these case managers. I don't know if we're going to find 2 case managers at this point, because school districts all over the place are looking for special ed help, right? This is different than a paraprofessional, which is an important role as well. But these are the people executing IEPs, writing them, and doing everything like that. If we can't fill those, we are going to have to contract those services out to get that support for us. And we will carry those empty positions into next year, and it will look like those positions are open. But our preference would always be to have a person in that role, not a contracted service in that role.
Because ultimately that will save us money over the long run, right?
Over the long run, yes.
So we have a bucket of positions that we have to carry because of our legal obligations, particularly with respect to special ed. And what we do is by carrying those, we have to deliver that money has to be used to deliver these services to the kids. So whether it's used to deliver the services through employees of the district or through contracted services, we are still allocating that money.
Yeah.
So that money, then, it would be safe to assume that money is not largely representative of the underspend, other than if there was underspend in special ed, which, as we know, can happen from year to year because you have one placement change or one student move out of district.
Yeah. And to give you a little more context, for example, one of the positions that remained open this entire year that we just finished was speech pathologist position. We're about to actually fill it for next year. So even though we carried that open position all the way through last year, and we had to do contracted services for some of our speech services that we had to do, we found someone now, because we've kept the position, we didn't reduce it, which will be better and cheaper in the long run than the speech services that we were doing. So they'll hopefully get to know the students better. But it is challenging, and we have to be cognizant of when there's positions that we can't fill that we can put out there and cut. Like when we did that this fall, when we proposed our budget, and we were like, we got to be honest, we're not going to fill these para positions, right? There's just too many open. We don't have to do it contractually via the students' IEPs. Would it be great to have additional support? Always, right? Like we can always use support for our kids and stuff like that. But the reality is we weren't filling them, so we have to propose a cut to them and stuff like that. And it's kind of similar with the regular ed teacher position we had. Now that we're here, we were a little unsure in January where it was going to be. We were confident it was going to come. But it's the science position at Campbell is what we cut because it hasn't been able to be filled in a couple of years, right? It would be great to have an additional science teacher in Campbell, but like science teachers are really hard to find. And so we just had to recognize that that's not going to happen, and we had to reduce by then.
So how many para positions are unfilled?
From this past year?
24.
And that's including those that you've cut for next year's budget.
Correct.
And how many did we cut for next year's budget?
10.
And what's the dollar amount associated with that? Do you have a rough idea?
206, I think, or something
Okay, so
like that.
looking at the big picture right now, we're looking at a number of 1.4. Your cuts already have reduced. Next year, that would be 1.2 if everything else stayed the same, because you've already made proactive cuts in that.
And we already cut that science
And the
teacher,
science
which is like
position.
another 110 right there.
Okay, so 300. So of the 1.4, 300,000 is already factored into next year's budget.
But because we're default, does that default back to what the previous year's budget was?
No, because we already proposed to reduce it. So in the law that changed probably about 5 or 6 years ago, if you make a recommendation to reduce positions in your proposed budget, it falls into the default budget as well.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
go.
no. I've asked plenty of questions. You go.
I want to ask. I'm going to shift it. So if you have more questions on that,
I was also going to. I'm going to shift backwards though. Are you shifting forwards
no, I'm shifting backwards.
to ask how? Like, okay, that was my question.
I'm going to ask the hard question.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask what I hope is not an offensive question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do we know this number is accurate?
It's a great question, and I wish I could tell you with 100% confidence. I'm sure Julie feels the same way, that it's 100% accurate, but like we're still getting bills that are coming in, right? Like, and things are still happening in our buildings. Like Impact Fire was here yesterday. there's a heat sensor in one of the classrooms that is broken and malfunctioning, and we have to fix that, right? Now, is that a massive expense? It's not, but there's something we're gonna have to fix. Now, we're close enough to next fiscal year where we can like pull that money and do that repair technically out of next fiscal year, because we're not in that room right now, right? So like we can kind of cross that bridge over to it, but the things and bills are still coming in. Another good example is where we got our Pinkerton CTE bill. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I forget the exact day that it came in. And we have 4 students to go to Pinkerton. And our CTE bills, while we budget for it, we pay specifically on how often they attend school, right? And how often they self-transport and versus take our transport, so on and so forth when it comes to CTE. So we got the Pinkerton one, which is 4 kids, but Alvern is our predominant CTE center. We're not going to get that bill until July or August, right? Because that's when they send us the bill and stuff like that, once they get through all their records and everything. We have about an estimate. First semester it was about, I think, don't quote me, say 50,000, because the total for both of them was 59, so I think it was about 50 for Alvern. So we're anticipating roughly the same amount of money is going to be for semester 2 for Alvern, right? But it could be 49, it could be 52, something like that.
Are you planning for the highest number that it could be? In the sense that they attended 100% of the time, they took
Correct.
transportation as.
Right.
That's what we budget for, right?
And last year,
Yep.
looking at the CT and how that was expended, it was actually a match for the beginning and the first and second semester. So our first semester was 56,000,
So,
321.
We understand that you're dialing in final bills, right? Like that makes sense to me. Can you just help us understand? And by the way, like first year doing this, right? I think I said to the superintendent, this is a hard job,
Yeah.
and it's not like there's all these people raising their hand like I would love to do that, right? So like, thank you for doing this job. We appreciate you being here, and we're fully aware of the fact that you haven't done this before. So look, I mean, it could have been in the other direction, and
That is true.
that would have been a really hard conversation.
100%.
But can you just help us, your job, I mean, we're looking at a spreadsheet that has 1,900 lines on it, okay? But can you help us just understand what you found that jumped this, that doubled this, and, sort of, just kind of give us like just a general idea? And this is not a blame thing, it's just I just want taxpayers to understand like how we found this.
I will tell you, because it is my fault. Julie, I need to listen to Julie more is one of the things, and I need to stay out of the business stuff sometimes, and I think that's a dynamic that we're working on and like we'll continue to get better at. While we've worked together in the past, the dynamic we have is different for us right now. And to be honest, we have the same spreadsheet you see right now, and there's an encumbrance outstanding line there. The number that was there previously when we were preparing for last week's board meeting, I failed to recognize, and this is why I need to stay out of the financial stuff sometimes, that money was already accounted for in the available balance stuff that was coming out of that number right there. Like the available balance there, I shouldn't have subtracted the encumbrance number from that was remaining, because it's already accounted for in that last column there. And that's my mistake. And when we were talking about prepping it, and Julie's like, what number are we telling them tonight? This is the sheet. I'm like, well, we got to subtract the encumbrance. We're going to put 780 there, and we'll be good, and we go from there, because we still got that stuff still being paid out and stuff like that. So it was a total misread from me, and it was a total mistake on my part for not staying in my lane and not getting too involved in some of the financial stuff. And I need to be involved in the financial stuff, but I also have to recognize for myself to stop and to respect the role other people have and to stick to my role, which is to be support when it comes to this stuff and not try to drive the bus on it as much. So to answer your question, I'm an idiot. That's why you had the wrong number.
Can you just explain, so looking at this
Yeah.
spreadsheet, so we've got a bunch of things across the top. We have, but getting toward the right side of it, we have budget, period expenditures, encumbrances outstanding, which is what you're talking about.
Yep.
Year to date, I'm assuming that's expenditures, and
Yep.
then available balance. Can you just quickly tell us, like, what did each of these columns mean, so that way we understand?
Yep. So the budget column is what was budgeted in that particular line. And this is sorted, currently the one you're looking at is sorted by account number right now, and by maximum available balance left in that particular account number. So the budget
Hey,
line is what
Brian.
was in, yep.
Can you share your screen on the Google Meet?
I can, let me try. Yeah, give me a second, and I will.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
as you go through that question, and as we look at this spreadsheet and explanations, like I see 1.7 at the end of this, not 1.4, so help me get.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
get
I
back
see
to
it
that,
now.
yeah, it's a good question, and that's partly where the mistake was last week that I was trying to do and stuff like that. So the budget is the budget. Period expenditures this is taken from a detailed expenditure report, so it's whatever particular, we're in period 12 right now, so we're in month 12 of the fiscal year, June is month 12 this year, that's how much money we spent this month in those particular lines.
All right, that makes sense.
So, and there'll be one more of these, because we actually have a 13th month. July counts as the 13th when you close your books for the fiscal year, because you do still get bills in
Stuff ends, yep.
July that you need to go back and
So
pay
like
for
that
the previous
CTE
fiscal.
bill would be,
There's
that's,
something there
okay.
that's gonna
All right.
show up in a period expenditure in period 13. The encumbrances, and this is where I screwed up last week, encumbrances outstanding is stuff that we have still encumbered that we expect to still pay out. For example, out-of-district tuition bills, we're still working on out-of-district tuition bills. And, that actually, don't go to that line right this second, but you want me to use that as an example. So as of last week when we were dealing with this, we were still working on our out-of-district tuition bills. So we had certain money encumbered still in that line because we were expecting a certain amount to pay out for those bills. As
And
we
again,
said,
what you were
kids-
encumbering in that line was what you thought was the maximum.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And we do that to prevent us from spending it elsewhere, right? So if the line, the budgeted, like, available balance looks like zero because we've encumbered a bunch of it, we know not to spend out of that line because the money's already, like, reserved for some sort of purpose already. So we have a number of lines here that still have encumbered balances to that. My mistake is I didn't think that those encumbrances were already subtracted out of that last column, the available balance line. I thought we had to do that math ourselves, where it's already accounting for that in this particular report, and that was where the mistake came in. The year-to-date expenditures, that next column is literally that, how much to this point we have expended out of that particular column. And then the available balance is as of right this second, how much is available in that particular line. That does account for stuff that we've encumbered in that line as well. So that's where those 5 columns in this particular spreadsheet are.
In looking at these columns, and this could be my ignorance of Google everything, because I can't stand Google, but these don't look like these are formulas in these look like they were manually entered.
Yeah, I had
Does
it.
that mean that you guys have manually entered all of these?
No. This is a report run out of eFinance, our reporting
Okay.
document, stuff like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so we know that there's no like math errors in this.
Yeah.
Unless eFinance, who probably has pretty good insurance, screwed up
So
something.
does that explain why it's 1.7 in the corner?
So the 1.7, if you scroll all the way down here on available balance, you're going to see it's right here at 1.7. This is where we have to do some estimating of stuff we know we have to pay out still that is not already encumbered. For example, we have hourly employees who have worked, who still are working, right, in this particular year, that we don't know how much we're exactly paying them out because they haven't worked those hours yet, right? Like we have custodials, we have administrative assistants, we still have a number of hourly people. We can project if they work their scheduled hours that they're gonna be about $50,000 worth of stuff still. That's gonna encompass salaries, it's gonna encompass benefits, it's gonna, and everything kind of associated with it. We haven't encumbered that because we liquidated, is that the term?
Yes.
Liquidated all of the salary encumbrance lines over the past week. So we know that's gonna come straight from that available balance in those particular lines. Another example, we just had teachers in for summer PD this past week, last week and this week, that we'll have to pay out from a professional development line here. We didn't encumber that money in advance because we didn't know which teachers were coming. I mean, we did, but we didn't set aside the money through an encumbrance. So that will come out a certain amount of money. If you go to the CTE tuition line, you'll see that there's a slight amount encumbered to account for the Pinkerton students that we got the bill for, but we haven't encumbered the Alvern kids yet that went to CTE and stuff like that.
$360,000 is a big difference.
It is, but we do think those are the bills we're still getting here at the end. We went and we looked at, like last year's Unit 13 or like thing and tried to do that. It's a number that's similar to that, but to answer your question, if we think this is 100% correct, I think we learned from last week, we don't know quite yet because it's our first time doing it. We're anticipating some of these things that we're still paying out, and we're hoping that number we just told you, the 1.4, is much more accurate than what we told you last week, but it can still be different. than what it is.
So I'm just like auditing a line here mathematically, just to see if this makes sense to me.
Yep.
And I can't come up with the number, so I need your help. Not to put you on a math project on the
Nope.
spot. I'm on line 922, which is, out of account 330, DW Special Education, Professional Services. It was budgeted for 422, 499.92. My initial inclination was, okay, well, we have period expenditures, we have encumbrances, then we have year-to-date expenditures, and if I subtract all of those from the budgeted amount, it should equal the available balance. That's not the case. So then I just tried to say, okay, well, what if year-to-date expenditures is period expenditures plus encumbrances plus whatever else, if the 371 is the total number. That also, so I'm
Yep.
thinking that you have to subtract in outstanding, encumbrances outstanding and year-to-date expenditures.
Correct.
So year-to-date expenditures is including period expenditures?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That
Now,
makes
also
sense.
part of this, which is tricky sometimes, which is challenging, is like that 422 number there, it's not what we actually budgeted for that stuff there. It's because we've transferred money into that line for various things as the year goes on. So like when you pull this report, now we're getting super into the weeds right here. Like as the year goes on, we'll do transfers of money to different accounts, right? Like if we're gonna do something like contracted services, for example, or we need to get evaluations done from an outside person, whatever the case is. If you think back throughout the course of the year, at various meetings, we've come to you and said, we're gonna transfer money from this line to that line, so on and so forth. So some of it, you can see the transfer and it's slightly different than what the budgeted line was.
So like that line, for example, we ended up with $41,000 of available balance.
Yeah.
So are you using that line specifically that there was
No, I'm
transfers,
just
or you're
saying, like,
guessing? Okay. Okay, so I would imagine that line, we wouldn't have transferred unless something crazy happened where we had all of a sudden, like a student move
Yeah.
out of district or something, after you transferred money, but
Yeah.
whatever, that's fine. I'm understanding that there's a lot of moving parts that this at least makes sense to me now, so.
I just said that because if someone's like looking at the spreadsheet, pulls the entire budgeted thing that we did from last year, which is up there on the websites and stuff like that, and it's like, these two numbers right in this line don't match. Yep, because we transfer as the year goes on, different things.
So when do we expect that we would get a final number?
Next week, we'll be in, again, a little bit of a better spot. Really what it comes down to is the audited numbers, right? So we get once, that process starts and we really have, solid information that backs up the information that we have.
And it's not uncommon at this point in the school year to have this number be changing.
Oh,
and
of
be
course.
fluctuating, right? Because there is a lot of unknowns still. And so we have kind of the ballpark estimate, and whatever's remaining will in fact go to the taxpayers as a return. It'll just increase whatever the number we think is going back. It'll be in addition to that.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we went back, sorry to cut you off, but we went back and looked at last year's stuff as well. Looked back at last year's minutes from the last June meeting you had and stuff like that. And like I'm not trying to, this is not like pushing back, but like you used an estimated number there as well. Like obviously I think it was probably more accurate than the number we gave you, but it's still an estimate at that point right now because of these
So
things coming
the
up.
sum at the bottom of the encumbrances outstanding is 195, 287.95.
Yeah.
If you were not, if that was the number, that was the column that you miscalculated or included or whatever.
Yep.
That's not $700,000. So
No, because we did a bunch of stuff between that
Since
meeting
then,
last week of
yeah.
like liquidating that account. So paying out the bills associated with it, so it's no longer encumbered, right, because it got paid out.
I see. Okay.
And then there are certain lines, like you get to a point where like, let's say we encumbered $100,000 for a salary line, right? And we only end up needing to pay 90% of it out, so like 90,000 of it. Well, then we can, once we release and done paying that out, we can no longer encumber it, and the encumber is kind of released back into the available balance line.
Understood. Okay. I think that I now have a full, complete understanding
Like
of what we're looking
the
at.
fixes that you've already contracted for, that were part of the encumbrances, those are already in process. Some of those projects are already in process.
What was
So
that?
for the end of year.
For the end of year.
So we've encumbered as much as we can on those. Obviously, we're gonna wait a bit before we're,
But I don't think they're in here yet, that's what he said.
oh, that's correct. That's
They're
not
not
part
in
of
this
the, that's not a
Wouldn't
part
that
of the
be
one
The
ninety-five.
275 then, or the 5, whatever we agreed to.
The amount that
Encumbered.
the amount we voted
So
to.
the ones we voted on last week,
Yeah.
we haven't encumbered, they're not encumbered in this spreadsheet you see in front of you right here.
So the 1.7 is, well, again, you've already said that there's 300,000 of that you're expecting to have to pay out of this budget. And then there's another, whatever we encumbered last week will also come out of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for today's purposes, I mean, I definitely appreciate you updating us on the new number, how it came to be, where the error was. I think maybe in the next month or two, we need to dig in a little bit to figure out how we don't have that happen again in terms of next year, how soon we can have a somewhat reliable number. And again, understanding that there will always be up until June 30th and even in month 13, there will always be some amount of variation to it. But I think we can do that in other meetings. My understanding is there's a hard stop today of 4:30. And so I guess I just want to clarify and understand, has there been any further thought as to what this money should be used for end of year?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, maybe ironic's the right word. You know, we walked in Monday to a sinkhole in the LMS parking lot, you know, by one of the drain pipes and one of the catch basins there. It's a good sized hole, about, you know, this big and straight down into the whatever. I mean, we've talked about this on and off all year, that parking lot has to be addressed. And, it's gonna be a huge project. Continental was here, Monday, trying to get us an estimate. They're still working on it, but they're like, off the cuff estimate is between $300,000 to $400,000 to redo that parking lot, you know. Now, they were there doing the drilling down or whatever they do to figure out what needs to happen underneath and everything associated with that. They were trying to get us today. They weren't able to. That's okay. You know, they're very, very busy, and are gracious enough to even come out and help us this week, you know. And then we're told Monday we're supposed to have it, but like that rough estimate is between the 300,000 and 400,000, you know.
Closer to 4.
Yeah, closer to the 4.
And does that resolve all of the problems that are happening with the LMS parking lot, or is that something that is like a part one, or is that?
My understanding is it would resolve the parking lot as it is. Like, it's to complete tear it up and redo it all, right? Like,
As is.
As is, yeah.
Right, so not adding another egress by any, you know, we've talked about that at different times, but, okay.
The other option that we do have a quote for, that I actually reached out to the town on, was a new police cruiser for the SRO that we have. The police are in a position where their fleet is at Edwards quite a bit, as you probably all noticed. And this particular cruiser would be directly of the benefit to the school resource officer, and assigned directly to the school resource officer as committed by the Board of Selectmen chair. That estimate that came in, and we have the actual quote for it, is $65,859.
Can we spend money as a board on something that isn't, like, that wouldn't be owned by the district?
So I did have that conversation with Chairman Brunel, and initial conversations between Chairman Brunel and the town administrator, and there weren't any concerns raised because it's directly associated to the school resource officer.
I'm not concerned on their part. I'm concerned on our side. Like, do we run afoul of anything if we're encumbering part of our budget for something that is not owned by the district?
Well, I think we're owning it. Like, I think that's how that works.
We wouldn't own a police cruiser.
No, we wouldn't own a police cruiser.
Right, so that's something,
Oh.
I do want to ask the DRA.
And I think we would have thinking about it is, does it impact no means no? Right, because there was one in the budget that passed, one as a warrant article and maybe two as a
But
warrant.
that's where it gets hairy,
Right.
because it's not, that was a town warrant article, that was not a.
So that's another
that was not a
concern that I
school
had
board
as I was
warrant.
driving in, is that even doable?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I think, they do so much for us in terms of like help, like, they really have a huge presence at our schools, they've been really, amazing with respect to like emergency management and stuff, so, I would absolutely be all for helping them, but there's a lot of questions on that, and if we have to vote on it today, I don't know that we have the answers to those things. The parking lot that parking lot is problematic, and I think we've known that that's gonna be a big project for quite some time.
That's why we had the study in there, in the budget for a period of time before that was removed, and that was 75,000 or so for just the study.
Right. I mean, I think it's, Continental's constantly doing things for our town that
Yeah.
I think we don't often realize how lucky we are that they're doing these things for us, but, I think if we start to look at our trust funds for things like maintenance, right, we're working towards planning ahead for a roof for Campbell. That's one thing, but like, we already know that just, if we could even continue to fund at the rate that we're at, we're only gonna pay for a roof. We're not gonna have like a bunch of money to do all of these other things. So I think that, it's kind of weird timing that the sinkhole opened up. Thankfully, there's not a bus in the middle, but I don't necessarily think that that's a terrible idea to address that and get it taken care of. That school we've done a lot of the other work at. It'd be nice to have one that's like.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up CHS again. I walked away from the last meeting after having looked at it, pretty disappointed that there was very little money in the underspend that we had earmarked for CHS, and I not because I think there was just some people were advocating a little bit more for the projects at GMS and LMS, and I think some of the ones that underspend would be a useful, helpful tool for at CHS. Those just didn't get advocated for in terms of the final. The auditorium. So last year we put $35,000 towards the auditorium, and we left it up to the school to best use that money in terms of the sound system and in terms of, which they did, but that only went so far. This past weekend, they've been saying all along, and I'm saying they in terms of Friends of Performing Arts, I think Mr. Lammy, I think the whole performing arts department has said that the back, correct me if I'm wrong, the scrim, is that the right word?
It's the white.
There's a screen in the back that
supposed to be
is
white.
on its last leg that is a fire hazard that is $7,000 to replace. I mean, this is not a cheap thing, and that was on the list, but they didn't get to it. So there's these types of things that, I was just briefly looking, we put over 100,000 over towards GMS on different things, and I think we did LMS as well for different things, but we didn't.
But a lot of the GMS stuff was required of us though, right? Like the ramps, for example, we don't have a choice, we have to.
HVAC
Yeah.
portables.
Yeah,
Right, like, we
I
don't
understand. I understand.
Not that I'm saying that that's not, I mean, if this is a fire hazard, I'm just kind of wondering why that wasn't on the list.
It was last year.
But it wasn't on this year's list.
Right. And that's, I guess, the disconnect as well, right, with the new administration and not realizing that. I should have looked back to see that, but we have to figure out a better way
But was this list put in front of the administrators at the building levels?
We discussed this.
We did, yeah.
Okay, so we have a building level administrator who could have pointed that out.
Yeah, and I think it was tricky with the we're obviously in transition at CHS.
I don't really care about transition. I mean, that person is employed in this district until the last day that they're employed here. And so I don't really care to hear, I appreciate that you're always trying to protect everyone else, but the bottom line is, why are we hearing that on the last Friday before we have to vote on these things, That is why CHS is.
I completely agree. I mean, as we were talking at the last meeting, there was an email in February of 2025 where a professional sound person came out to the auditorium to suggest specific upgrades for the auditorium. We have a wide open box, where they control all the lights and stuff. That's open. That equipment could be taken at any time. That is an open box where there are microphones, where there's thousands of dollars of equipment. Usually those are sealed off with a door. None of that's happening. And again, I'm not necessarily advocating for that to happen right now, but what I'm saying is there was a list with a priority level with quotes of 3 things that went out in February of 2025 that said if there are end of the year monies available, these are things that would be useful. And that didn't make it to us. I don't know that it made it to them either. So I'm concerned about that. So I'm throwing that out there for conversation.
In terms of encumbrance in the process, going back to the parking lot for a moment, what's the process for requiring or needing a quote in order to do an encumbrance?
That's a good question. With regard to the DRA, I would assume that is something I'm not 100% sure if the quote is
If like a verbal estimate.
correct,
was-
is
yeah.
going to be sufficient. I think in years past, like I don't think we had a quote for absolutely everything last year. I think there were a couple of estimates that we had.
Can I, this is like, you know, I mean, I know you have to leave in 18 minutes, but I don't know if DRA is open till 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you want to step out and try to see if you can call them. I've had, on the real estate side, I have luck every time I call.
Okay.
It may be worth asking that question because we're about to try to vote on something that we should probably have the answer to. And we still have a quorum, so I guess if you had to leave or not, although it would be nice
Yeah,
for you to
I-
be, it'd be nice for you to be able to participate
We
in
do
the
have to
vote.
think about the public reaction to when this becomes, when it doesn't come out on a Friday afternoon. As to we have this underestimation, it's not gonna be good in the public eyes, so.
What's also not going to be good is the dramatic spikes in taxes, right? And I hear you, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'm balancing the other side of this, which also isn't good.
Yeah, and I don't know, at least from my perspective, I don't know that the big fluctuation in taxes is a major issue for me, You know, for some people it very well could be. I think from a PR perspective and to show goodwill back to the taxpayer, we got big things coming next year. We have the teacher contract, we have whatever's gonna happen with GMS. And to end up with this much money left over nobody did anything bad or malicious, or it wasn't like the LMS thing with the solar. It's totally different from that, but it's gonna leave a bad taste in the mouth of the
I think
public.
we're perpetually in a really tough spot, right? Because I think people think it's easier to, oh, this is easy, you just return it to the taxpayers. But there's other components too, like, for example, that parking lot, right? Like, we don't have these massive, I mean, it probably doesn't seem like it, because this year we have a huge return coming, or underspend. But we don't typically have these massive budgets that we can just absorb $400,000 for a parking lot, right? So that's also going to be a problem for the taxpayers. Like, at the end of the day, that's where it's coming from regardless. Like, they're going to, like, the taxpayers will, there's no way around it, they will have to pay for that. And so if that comes as like, you know, a huge increase in the budget because we have to budget for that or whatever it is, it's gonna hit them regardless. I think that where I totally get where you're coming from, and I know that will be the reaction, right? But I also understand that from like what Andrew's saying is, we're gonna hit them with that regardless. But if we artificially lower the tax rate right now by doing this return, and then not only does it go back up because it was artificially lowered, but then on top of it, we have to hit them with, by the way, this parking lot has to be hit now. So now you have got like a double whammy in terms of the impact, right? And so that's the,
I think it's a savings one year and an expense next year. It's the swing, whatever that swing may be.
right, and I agree with you, that is functionally what it is.
But come
But
December, when
from a
everybody gets a new
tax rate
tax bill,
but from a tax rate
God knows what's gonna
perspective,
happen.
yeah, but from a tax rate perspective, that's my point, is, you know, there are plenty of people who, they're kind of like, this is the tax rate, and then if it goes like, boom, this, it's like,
Try email,
that's
okay.
very disruptive financially.
I think it's a savings one year and a cost next year. I don't think it's as big an issue for that many people in Litchfield.
I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree. I struggle with what is our role as school board members, in terms of the duty we take to the district as a whole, as a total district. And so I'm not advocating at all for not returning a good chunk of that money back to the taxpayers, but I do think that there are needs that our district has, the parking lot particularly being one of them, that we have a duty to provide safe areas for our students, for our teachers, including parking lots. And I would struggle with returning this much money back to taxpayers when we have these projects outstanding and when we're in a default budget next year. So we're not gonna be able, I'm gonna assume, we're probably not gonna be able to just tackle those budget with end of the year funds next year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that.
Well, we may not be able to wait until the end of next year, because yes, we have to
Yeah.
provide safety for our students and our teachers, but we also, that's public space, so we also, anyone can drive in there, right? Any private citizen can drive in there and fall into a sinkhole and sue us, so.
You do have responsibility to the taxpayer too.
Yeah.
I'd like
Hey, guys.
Yeah, I'd like to turn it over to Dan. Dan, any thoughts?
So I guess a couple questions I have at the bottom.
Says 1.7, right? And is that replacing the 780 number that we saw last week, or is that replacing the 519 and change number?
780.
It's temporarily replacing the 780, but we're anticipating about 300 of it, a little more than 300 of it to come off the books still for this fiscal year.
Okay. So if I look at that, the difference that we're looking at is about an extra 460 above what we were expecting.
No,
No,
it's about
700.
Well,
Right now,
790.
where we stand, Dan, for unassigned fund balance, after encumbrances that we've already taken, is about $900,000.
Right, okay, so we're expecting, well, we said 250 back to the taxpayer. We're gonna go spend 250 on a bunch of stuff.
Right. Now
So
there's
if we take
700
that,
beyond
We're
that.
at about an extra 460 from that.
No,
No.
The 900's already taking all that into consideration.
Right, yep, I completely understand. So I guess, I mean, I like the idea of hitting the parking lot and maybe doing, depending on what it was, and I think if I heard you guys correctly, the police car and the 3 things for the LMS, or sorry, CHS. But that's gonna consume all of it. So I don't know if there's something that we can do if we can use roughly a large chunk for color, like the parking lot, and then give to what Peter is thinking, because I'm kind of thinking along the same way, we can give a little bit more back to the taxpayers.
I think we could still,
I think we're all advocating for giving more back to the taxpayers.
yeah, we absolutely are gonna be able to do that. I think unfortunately, given where we're at right now, I don't think we can make any sort of decision on a police cruiser. I do also agree with Peter that that's something that the town did express some.
if we could do that, I would be supportive of it, and I'm more likely to support the parking lot because it's a super safety issue.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know that I would be supportive of anything else.
Are we talking about anything? I mean, I know we talked about the high school. I think
But
that,
if there, whatever other projects might be, the CHS stuff, which is not huge money, but I'm sure if we were to sit back and we could go through a whole nother list of.
I would be supportive. I'm on the fence about the parking lot. I hear all of your rationale. Like, to me, this is something that I think we should ask the voters on through a warrant article.
would we be asking the voters on seal coating it if we were or would we be
That's a
asking the voters?
That's a
on-
maintenance
No, I
issue.
understand that, but part of the problem we have is that we are also tasked with trying to maintain these things, right? I agree if we were going and we were saying, we could really use a few more classrooms.
It's just such a big ticket item.
I understand. No, I agree with you. I
Could we
understand.
get a quote on fixing the area in which the
We're getting
sinkhole
that as well,
exists?
yeah.
And then put the rest of it on, as a warrant article going forward?
I
To
mean,
make the
the-
parking
the-
lot safe for the start of the next school.
Just replacing that so it's usable is gonna be less than $10,000, right? Because you're just replacing that one, or not even replacing, you're addressing that one spot, right? Or at least that's what they told us offhand.
Then I think I'm in agreement with it, that, with Andrew, that we do that and then we put it as a warrant article for next year.
Can I say that's patching though, and that in order to actually address the project, they'd then have to undo the $10,000 of work that they just did when they addressed the parking lot as a whole. So in a way, I sort of see that, correct me if I'm wrong, as a waste of $10,000 this year if we're going to put on the warrant the LMS project or the LMS paving as a separate warrant article, which I don't know that we can do next year against a school and a contract, but that's a whole other aside.
I mean, and
I feel like
and
that
again,
could be a
it's
waste
not-
of 10 grand.
It's not a like, hey, we think we could really benefit from more classrooms and we're not gonna ask, we're just gonna do it, right? Like I think this is something, we have a parking lot. We have a duty to maintain the parking lot. The parking lot is failing we knew it was failing, but it's now showing that it's failing, like outwardly. And we're gonna have to solve, like, it's not like we can say, well, we don't need it. It's just a parking lot, you know? That's the difference for me in terms of like the warrant article versus.
But also, we don't have a quote.
Right.
Right.
No,
so
well,
we need
so
some- we
did
need to solve
you
that.
reach DRA?
No, they both went right to voicemail. I just sent 4 emails as well to other people, so I'm.
That's fine, I mean, it's not.
So do we have to encumber everything by
June
June
30th.
30th?
By Monday.
I will have
Which
to
is my,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we won't have time to post a meeting at this point.
I mean,
Well,
if,
what if we encumber it and then the DRA
Up to
says you
400,000, which is what the
Well, we
quote,
just don't know if the DRA permits encumbering, right? Up to-
Right.
that's for the cruiser, right?
No, they were saying for.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we were talking about as far as whether or not you needed a quote to be able to encumber, but correct, we also need to,
hesitant to talk right this second, but I'm going to, because I probably should, right? I do think the parking lot needs to be done, but we're losing $500,000 in revenue. Like, if you look at next year, like, if you go back to the fall, when we went through our budget stuff, through the whole harmless grant and the different funding formulas that they're there, we lost a lot. Like, our tax rate, we anticipated the tax rate, even on a default, being like, I think it was $1.65, you know? And that was returning about $200,000 to the taxpayers. And that big swing was not solely because of this loss of revenue that is out of our hands, but like certainly contributed a lot to that significant increase in what we were doing. I do think, now that we've gone through it for a year, we've seen how our spending is going to go from a district standpoint, that when we look at our budget proposal next fall, we can be reflective of the lessons we learned this school year, right? And then have a budget that is responsible, that addresses our needs, anticipates other potential big-ticket warrant articles, so the voters can really vote on those big-ticket warrant articles, right? I don't want to say that our proposed budget is going to be X amount of money, but it's certainly not going to be wild, you know, or anything like that. If you were to return this money, or a lot of it, to the taxpayers, it does offset that loss in revenue in that capacity. And that might be helpful for a long-term, just long-term, for people to see that kind of more consistency in the tax rate over time.
Say that again, it would offset the loss in revenue?
Right, so like this, so we get grants from the state, right? There's SWEPT, there's adequacy aid, and there's other things as well. They adjusted the formulas. If you go back to October when we were talking about all this, there's a one of the grants called a whole harmless grant that is being phased out by the state. That specifically is costing the district a little over $350,000 of loss of revenue. So those grants come to us as revenue, right? And every 2 years, we're losing that $350,000 from the state, and we're not getting anything to make it
How
up.
does returning the money to the taxpayer offset that for us?
Because like, we're returning that money, it will offset the it's like, it's not apples to apples, but like by returning more money, it helps lower that tax rate that was increased because we didn't have the revenue to offset our spending. Does that make sense?
So it's already factored into the tax rate that we don't. that we're not gonna.
Right, like that grants from the state is set, like that's money gone already. But if
Was
we're
that
returning
factored
more
into
back,
this year's tax rate?
no, because this is the
Still
first
have
year
some.
we lost it, right?
Do we lost, okay, so we
So we lost
it.
20% of it, and we lost 20, and we'll lose 20% every 2 years of that grant till it's completely eliminated.
No pressure, huh?
Can we vote on things contingent upon the answer as far
Well,
as
that's
the
it. You can
police
make-
cruiser?
Yeah, I mean,
And the quote of the,
you can make it contingent upon DRA approval, which the administration will have to figure out. And if the DRA,
It's not, it'll be returned to the taxpayer.
if the DRA says no quote, no whatever, it has to go back to the taxpayer.
Mhm.
And that's just it.
Well, that at least solves that problem.
that's for the parking lot, correct?
That's for all.
That could be for all, that could be
Anything
for the
that we don't
parking
have-
lot, it
anything
could
we
be
don't have a-
whatever the board decides to action.
But I still
But the
think we need an answer on the cruiser.
The
if we were
cruiser
able
to
do
me
that.
seems legal, like there seems like there should be legal questions, because I have concerns about ownership, I have concerns about use. So if at some point there are 7, I'm hopefully that never happens, cruisers that are in and they decide we're gonna need to take this SRO vehicle and use it because we're down enough cruisers right now.
I can't imagine that the legal's gonna say that that's permissible. I'd be shocked.
But if we're buying it with our money, who is the owner of it? And then therefore I get into liability.
Well,
So,
Could we,
then
could
it's
we
not-
buy
then
it
where's
and
it
then gift
insured?
it to the police department?
Can you buy it and have an MOU?
I don't know, but I don't know that I feel comfortable voting on that without answers to those questions. I don't think it's a bad idea if we had, researched it a month ago.
I agree with you. I don't think we can structure a motion to properly encompass all of the considerations that it would need to be contingent on.
Yeah.
Then I think our safest bet is to encumber some money to do the repair to the parking lot.
I'll make a motion for discussion, I guess, everyone can, but I'm gonna try and word it correctly. For up to $400,000 of, underspend to be used for repair and restoration of the LMS parking lot pending DRA approval and pending a quote from Continental. Does that sound about right?
I'll second for discussion. I think in hearing you make the motion, I think what's also challenging is, are we just repairing it in like kind? I know there were some issues with the way that it's currently laid out, right? So that it doesn't meet, ADA standards, and so
I
you
mean,
need a.
I think at some point, again, going back from stuff that was before us, there was talk of like doing stuff with the fields there in conjunction with when you
Right.
did the parking lot.
We didn't want to do the parking lot until if we were moving fields, that they were
Fields aren't gonna
done.
be moved.
I mean, maybe that was when that new
That
building
was
was there.
in discussion with the GMS.
past.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The GMS, the new GMS.
Never mind. I just remember
Oh, look at
something.
So I just am wondering, if we have to word it that way, are we putting ourselves in another position where we can only replace it exactly how it is and not make it ADA compliant, which we may need to.
How was it not?
I don't remember the ADA compliance. I
Was it
thought-
not, what was it? It was,
It's because of the way that the handicap spots are not actually accessible to the building and the way that it was, like the
Yeah,
parking,
my-
it should be reconfigured, redesigned.
I can also, I may be way off on this,
Is
but
there
I
not
also
next to
think that
building, you have to get like up and
yeah, I
into the
think that
building?
that was also a problem.
So you'd have to put parking places on the same level as the door,
Correct.
which would then
Change
change
Group
the
the whole
entire
parking lot.
New design, right.
I mean, what is your, I know, I already know what your thoughts are on this, so what are you thinking that we should be encumbering some of this to do some of this stuff, or are you kinda leaning towards just returning all of it?
I am leaning towards, certainly the repair because it's necessary, but I am leaning towards this, we should be asking the voters for this. I am.
Dan, what are you leaning towards in terms of all of this?
So the LMS LMS parking lot needs other changes to get up to, call it 100% code. For the ADA compliance. I guess I would be leaning towards making repairs to the parking lot. But if we have to change the parking lot in the future anyway to make it ADA compliant, then I don't think it makes sense to redo the entire parking lot if we're just gonna rip it out again in, call it 5-10 years.
Well, I think that the idea originally of encumbering this was to take care of it fully. But that, in hearing Heidi make the motion, I think that it raises
Open
that.
to amending it, but yeah, I mean, I see your point. I don't know what the quote, because we don't have it in
We don't
front
have a
of
quote,
us.
right.
What is it for bringing it up to compliance? Is it just for,
Well, I mean, even at that point, if it was like, if the quote was to do, tear the whole thing out, regrade, and lay down asphalt, but then it was like, okay, well, it's gonna be another $30,000 to make it ADA compliant, that would be something we could pull out of our trust fund. So like, that's not, I think my only issue with the way that you worded it, and again, I'm still on the fence on this, but my issue with the way you worded it is it could pigeonhole us into making modifications to the,
yeah.
Well, the time is now 4:30. I know Mr. Plansky has a hard stop here. Are we gonna amend the motion and call a vote, or what's the plan?
I'll amend the motion to address the concern, but I'm not sure
before
what
you-
the
before-
language,
before
I'm not
you
sure what the
amend it-
language is.
Before you amend it, I guess, like, so Dan, your feeling is just fix what's going on. Andrew, your feeling is fix what's going on. Peter's same. So, I mean, I'm thinking, like, if that's the will of the board, I have no, like, I want to do what's right for the taxpayer too. Like, I want to make sure that we're doing what's right to them. I think my concern is that they're going to get, we are going to have to keep coming forward with big expenditures that they're going to have to keep funding because we have these big issues that we have to address. So it's just a matter of,
And the parking lot is on the CIP,
It
right?
is.
Both the school and the town CIP.
we just keep running into these issues where things are on the CIP and then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's been on the CIP for 20 years and now we have to do something because it's falling apart. So, I think that,
Well, Dan, were you saying, and, sorry,
no, please.
Dan, were you saying you're not behind the repair and restoration of the parking lot? I guess I'm just trying to understand what your point was.
So my concern is if the motion is to include bringing it up to full compliance, I will get behind it. And I will be, and pending upon DRA and quotes and all of that other stuff. But if it's not, I don't want to spend $400,000 to put new blacktop down and fix
So make
a
your motion
sinkhole
to be in
when
compliance.
Yeah.
we're gonna have to redo it again anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
but
it's a one and done, I'm all for it.
I'm just, I mean, I'm just struggling on this side. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to, I think Peter's point about, like, we are coming forward with a teacher contract and we are coming forward with we are going to have to do something about GMS. Like, maybe the right thing right now is to fix the hole and return the rest of it.
You're like this, man.
I know, but like, but
Do
that's,
your yo-yo.
but that's the nature of this, right? It's like there's a million considerations in this. It's not just like an easy thing. I think, and you're saying that you're not inclined to, at the end of the day, I don't want to sit here and have a split vote on this. Like, I'd rather just all be aligned in what our strategy is and what we think is the right thing. And so that's what I'm trying to,
I think the repair might get us a couple of years, get us past the school, get us past the contract, and be able to put something forward. Or we put it on this, on this March, but I think this is
maybe
A big
there's an
number.
economy of scale if we are doing something if we're putting something on for GMS, maybe there's an economy of scale in a quote.
to do whatever has to be done at GMS, because that parking lot area needs work too.
Yeah, once certainly any equipment's there,
Yep.
doing whatever, that's going to need to be addressed too.
Okay, so I am now firmly planted in the idea that I think there's it needs to get done, but maybe it makes sense to try to tackle that at the same time. See if there's some economies of scale with that. And in the interim, we can return this money to the taxpayers because we're trying to build trust with the taxpayers to be able to give us the authority to go fix the things we need to fix. That's where I'm firmly seated, so I am now ready to vote.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
But we're gonna amend the motion, because I don't want it to be up to 400,000. So it's Heidi's motion, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna just withdraw my motion at this point. Do you withdraw your second?
I do.
Okay, motion withdrawn, second withdrawn.
So I would make a motion to expend up to $20,000 to repair the sinkhole at the LMS parking lot.
Okay, motion,
Second.
second by Mr. Shoemaker. Additional discussion on the repair of LMS sinkhole. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Plansky?
Aye.
Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sames?
I'm an aye.
Mr. DeWitt?
Aye.
That carries 5-0. Additional discussion.
Well,
Yeah,
no, we're-
I just want to I feel like expressing my frustration for a minute. I feel like we're letting down our students, and I'm just going to say that.
The
We are,
parking
no, not the parking lot. We are returning, how much? $900,000 to taxpayers. We did not spend our budget. We as a school board oversee this budget, and we as a school board, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone else, did not spend our budget this year, and that is money that could have gone to, there are definitely needed projects at GMS. Even if we're looking at a solution, we're still years away from that actually coming to fruition by the time it's built and done and executed and all of that.
You do realize we only voted on $20,000.
I'm expressing it overall because I'm not hearing any support for anything more than that today.
So, well,
I don't have any quotes to go off of.
And
That's
I'm
the
not,
issue.
and that's why I'm saying I want to express my frustration.
I agree with you. I think that if we look big picture,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah, sorry, Peter. You can go.
It's okay.
If we look big picture at
I would be supportive if
serving,
we could do something about the police car if we can do it legally.
if we look big picture about supporting the students and doing the right thing for the students, right? We have this behemoth of an issue at GMS. And one of the biggest justices we can do for our district is fixing these problems for once and for all. And part of that may be hedging and saying, we need to continue building this rapport with the taxpayers. We have this new administration that's doing a great job. And if this is a showing of good faith of like, hey, look, we need you to support us. And in turn, we are gonna continue to try to do everything we can to support you, then that will serve our students.
I understand that. That's playing, as we call the long game, right?
Right.
In the short term, we are returning $900,000, our budget, to taxpayers, which, hey, it's their money, so I'm not opposed to it, and by the way, I'm a taxpayer, so hey, yay, great.
Yeah, no, I get
But
where you're
as
coming-
a school board member, I am disappointed for the students that we have a budget that, if you go back to the actual number of 1.7 at least, or 1.4 that we did not spend this year, that could have been used, if properly planned, to help some of the projects that we need to tackle this year. And I'm just expressing that disappointment
I understand.
and frustration because I feel like I didn't do my job.
We didn't know
I
we didn't know about the number.
I share your frustration, and this is where, right, and I understand the administration knew, getting up to speed, but this is where, like, geez, I wish we had a bit more line of sight into this, and advance notice into this.
But we will
because
next year.
It would have been a different discussion,
Yeah.
right?
That's all I'm gonna say.
Is there anything else that before we make any sort of,
You don't have quotes. Is that what you mean, to spend money? I wish we had quotes. I wish we had firm quotes for these things.
Yeah. All right, anything else to discuss this evening on encumbrances?
so we are looking at returning,
About 800, so with the $20,000 motion this evening, that will be approximately $875,000 back to the taxpayer, approximately, given some last minute end of year adjustments.
and just very quickly, just so people can like see ahead tax rate wise, right? So we know that this is gonna lower. You've made roughly $300,000 in budgetary adjustments. but we're not gonna be able to offset, like an $800,000 swing, we're not gonna be able to offset another $500,000 in the following tax year. So taxpayers we don't know, but very likely will experience what will appear to be a jump in the tax rate again as a result of the schools.
There will be a swing. Yes.
Yeah, I think from this grant stuff, it's 2 years from now, it will be every 2 years is when that swing is coming. And then,
Well, but there's a swing regardless, because
well, then the swing next year for whatever we put out.
no, but I'm saying there's a swing because we're artificially lowering the tax rate by $800,000. So 300 you've already accounted for in the budget, 500,000 is going to just be in the budget again, so they're going to see a tax increase. It's going to look like our budget went up by $500,000. Unless you're able to find more cuts. Does that make sense? I think we just have to get ahead of that, because I just don't wanna, this is all well and good, but people's memories are short when it comes to returning money.
I said it
think-
last time, I'll say it again this time. I don't feel like people understand or notice as much when we return money.
No.
They feel it when the tax rate goes up. That seems more expensive. And so, yeah, I do think there's an education component to that. But at the end of the day, anytime anyone's taxes goes up, they're going to complain.
They're gonna look at it though, and they're gonna say, wow, our taxes went up by, that was $500,000 increase in the.
I do think I understand what you're saying, and if we were to come back exactly with everything as it is right now, then yes, there would be a tax increase rate. So that's the work we have to do.
Right, but I don't.
To make sure
but
that what we present
To
is.
Heidi's point though, we can't gut our district to hit a certain number.
Right, yeah,
And so I just wanna there's gonna be 4 people that watch this, but for those 4 people,
You never know. They'll go back and rewatch it in like a year and pull it back up when
Right.
it's tax time. So.
but for those 4 people, next year, when they see our budget,
All right, any additional school board comments?
No.
All right, community input, second round of community input. I see no community joining us this evening, so I'll close community input. The board does not have any non-public business this evening, and so we will not go into non-public. And with that, we will close our public session, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Motion by Mr. Shoemaker. I will second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Shoemaker?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ms. Ames?
Aye.
And
Sorry.
Mr. Dewitt?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Time is now 4:43, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much, all. Have a great 4th.
bye, Dan.